All right. Hello and welcome to today's panel event. It's called Pathways to Change, Navigating Graduate Programs for Social Impact Careers, hosted by Career Services. We do have an amazing panelists, a group of amazing panelists representing SB2 MPH as well as the Graduate School of Education. For introduction, my name is Doris Tabassum. I'm an associate director for the Graduate and Professional School Advising Team with Career Services. I work with any student who wants to go into medical school, dental school, health profession schools, but I also work with anyone who's interested in going into graduate programs in any of the STEM fields. I have with me today Esther Ra, who's an associate director for the Nursing Education and SB2 team. And maybe she can speak about what she does.
Hi, thanks, Doris. Hi, everyone. My name is Esther Ra, and I am one of the advisors that works in the School of Nursing, Graduate School of Education, and also with SP2. And I also wanted to give a shout out to my colleague, Sharon Fleshman, who's also on here, who helped us do a lot of organizing for today's panel as well.
Absolutely. So without further ado, let us introduce our amazing panelists. So I would probably invite them to maybe unmute themselves and introduce themselves in the order that they.
Um, I'll go first. My name is Adisa Azel. I'm the Director of Admissions and Recruitment over here at the School of Social Policy and Practice at Penn. Welcome. I'm so excited to be presenting to you all today so that you can imagine some future pathways for your education and your career. Did you want us to say a little bit about ourselves too, or?
We do have a more direct question about that
Okay,
in a second.
Great.
I'm happy to go next. Hi, everyone. I'm Anita Steve. I'm the MPH Education Coordinator. So in my role, I support all things student-facing from admissions to graduation. So I'm excited to talk to you all about the MPH program today.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Allison Hagans. I am the Assistant Director of Admission and Financial Aid at the Graduate School of Education. Very excited to be here.
All right, thank you so much for the introductions. So why don't you introduce us to your role and a little bit about your experience in your current position that you have, and anything else you would like to add about your role in the school and the specialty that you're in.
Sure. So I actually this summer celebrated my 11th year at Penn in this role. Time goes by so quickly, right? And in another life, I started my career actually as a social worker. I worked for the city of Philadelphia, working with vulnerable children, youth, and families for a number of years, doing both direct clinical work as well as some macro and program evaluation and program planning work. And then over the course of earning my master's at SB2, earning my master's in social work at SB2, I became really passionate about higher education, maintaining really great connections and relationships here. And when a job opportunity came up, several job opportunities came up. I applied for 3 of them, got 2 of them, and chose this one. So I always say, it's really interesting how we end up on the pathways that we do, because while I'm no longer doing direct clinical or macro social work, I am still really ingrained in the profession, and now hopefully ushering in a new generation of talent and workforce for the profession, as well as our other degree programs. So that's like sort of how I ended up here in a nutshell. I'm currently also a student in the Doctorate in Clinical Social Work program, where I am sort of focusing my research on understanding the experiences of first-generation college students and how they develop their sense of belonging at predominantly white institutions.
I can share a little bit. So my background is in nutrition and dietetics. So I'm a registered dietitian by training and also have I would say I specialize in community nutrition. So my background has really been in educating community members. It's been around policy, systems, and environmental change initiatives to support community interventions. So some of the organizations I have worked with in the past have been the Women, Infants, and Children program, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance program. I was a grocery store dietitian for a bit, so helping the community members shop, which was a lot of fun. And before I came to Penn, I was the Community Impact Director with the American Heart Association, working on initiatives around nutrition access and promoting health around hypertension and also diabetes. So how I came to this position, I've been in my position for about 1.5 years, is I also guest lecture and I'm an adjunct instructor. So I was asked to guest lecture in the public health nutrition course at Penn and really loved being in the space of helping the next generation and talking about all things I love, which is nutrition. So when this position opened up, I was really excited about it. And now I get to teach the public health nutrition course, which I guest lectured in previously. So that has been exciting.
All right, hi again. I again represent the Graduate School of Education. This is actually almost year 2 for me, so I'm the baby of the group, it seems. Before my position at Penn, I was actually at my alma mater, Lehigh University. So most of my career has actually been in undergraduate admissions. So it's nice to be on the other side and helping students pursue graduate degrees. And that's where I also earned my master's in educational leadership. Currently in my role, I am in charge of all of our events, in person, virtual, admitted student, prospective, you name it, I do it. I also travel and get to meet students, which is probably my favorite part. And then I also assist with financial aid. So if you're interested in GSE, you will definitely see me. We are a small but mighty team. I primarily am interested in, of course, helping any student who is interested in higher education, but specifically first-gen students, because I was a first-gen college graduate, and especially students of color and those from marginalized backgrounds.
Thank you so much. All of you have such amazing array of experiences and knowledge that you bring to your roles. And so excited to hear how those will speak into some of the ways in which candidates can also strengthen their applications to applying to your program. So that brings us to our next question. What makes a candidate strong for when they're applying to your programs?
So I think there's a little bit of nuance about what those strengths would be based on the specific degree program of ours that you would be applying to. We are a small school at Penn. We have 5 degree programs, 3 master's and 2 doctoral programs, and I can get into a little bit about what those are. We have Master of Social Work, Master of Science in Social Policy, a Master of Science in Nonprofit Leadership, as well as a PhD in Social Welfare and a doctorate in Clinical Social Work. So sort of people's passions and interests are a little bit different based on which degree program that they're applying to, but all of them really, the underpinning of all of them is a commitment to inclusion, excellence, and impact. And so while we're also looking at applications holistically in terms of your academic experience and your professional experience, we're also looking at some of those, for me, some of the most impactful other aspects that applicants have that make them a strong applicant is personal qualifications such as maturity, ability for critical thinking, thought and analysis, good judgment, great oral and written communication skills, integrity, a respect for difference. And I'd even also say a capacity for self-awareness and a commitment to the values of the discipline in which you're seeking to further your education in.
Thank
For
you.
the Masters of Public Health program, some of the things that make an applicant strong is first, passion for public health. So there are various ways that you can show this, and I'm sure we'll get into like application details in a further question. But we really want to understand your journey to finding the field of public health. What got you interested in it? Was it a personal experience? Was it a class that you took? Was it, somebody shared their experience? Did you see a health inequity in action? Did you hear about one? So we'd love to know like what got you interested. And also, not only are we looking at strong academic background, but that's not the only thing we look at. We do look at applications holistically. So if you're worried about, your grades in some courses, we also look at like experience. So not only paid experience, but volunteer experience, just showing us that, you're committed to the field, you're trying to learn more about it, you're invested. So if your grades are something that you're worried about, you can always come talk to us, but we look at other things. We look at your passion for the field. We look at your willingness to go out and gain experience, whether it's paid or unpaid, who you're talking to. Have you, met with any of our current students or alum, like showing us that you're committed to the field and you're passionate and, you're excited about the profession is what makes our applicants strong.
Yes, all of those things for us as well. So at GSC, we have nearly 40 different programs. So we have about 23 master's programs and 16 doctoral programs that include both PhD and EDDs. And so it's really niche, which I love because you can really dive into what you're really interested in terms of education. So of those 39, only 3 have to do with teaching. So I always say if you are interested in education in any aspect, or if you want to be like education adjacent, so maybe like not in the classroom, but maybe a nonprofit, a community organization, public school, private, you name it, there is a space and a place for you. And so in that regard, you are admitted directly into that degree program. And they all have their own requirements and expectations and recommendations, but they all have a holistic review, which both, Adiza and Anita have spoke to. And what that means essentially is that everything that you submit is important and it's considered, right? So it's not a robotic process. It's not automated. We're not using AI, right? They have us for a reason because they want a personal review of who this person is holistically, right? So we're reviewing the application, the whole person, right? So it's not just about your transcript. It's important, right? Because, right, Penn is a great school, right? It's definitely a strong academic school, and it's selective, right? But it doesn't mean you have to have a 4.0 to get in. And it also doesn't mean if you have a 4.0, you're automatically admitted, right? So it's not just about your GPA or your GRE scores or whatever standardized tests or exams you may have to take. So they've already spoken to some great things. What I will say is how to be a strong applicant in terms of like etiquette and your approach is important, right? So I would say for sure, like to utilize the resources you have available to you. Like I know we all have great websites with lots of information, and that is definitely a good stop, right? To just explore the programs. You can look at faculty, you can look at curriculums, you can look at the price, right? All of these things are important when you're deciding on which graduate programs that you want to do or anything. Paying attention to important deadlines, right? So some, that will determine if you can apply or when you can apply. So you always want to be ahead and paying attention to things like that. Deadlines are not due dates, so you don't have to wait until then. But for us, you do have to get all of your materials in by the deadline in order for it to be considered complete. Checking your email regularly. So if you apply, pay attention to your email, because we'll send you reminders, we'll let you know next steps, or maybe if you're missing something and you definitely wouldn't want the deadline to pass and you're just now seeing email and trying to do everything last minute. I'm also a firm believer in following directions. It has saved me so many times, and it's so simple, but when thinking about things like application requirements or like essay prompts, for example, just follow the direction, right? Read it thoroughly. Look at what the program or the degree is asking you to do and do that. That's the like bare minimum. And sometimes programs don't want you to do extra, right? Sometimes they want what they want. And one of the reasons we're like that is because, like I mentioned, like we are a small team. So sometimes we don't have time to process an extra letter of recommendation depending on the volume. So just pay attention and follow the directions. And then Anita touched on this also, but like demonstrated interest, right? So get in touch with alumni or current students, or ask the admissions office or the program to put you in touch if you don't know anybody. You don't have to rely on LinkedIn, but that is a great resource. Attend events, right? So you can come to virtual events. You're already on a good start by coming here today. In-person events as well, especially if you're a current Penn student, you're already here. You can walk to our building and say hello and ask questions or get a brochure about our programs. And yeah, so I'll stop talking, but I think those are some good examples of how to, approach the application process and be a strong applicant in that regard.
Thank you so much for the insightful comments, and I do agree with all of the advice that you have given. In our line of work, we meet with prospective graduate students almost daily, and we tell them to show rather than tell their interest in their program, in the program that they're applying to, and let their experiences speak for them. Okay, so with that brings me to my next question. How can applicants highlight their accomplishments and projects well? And the projects and accomplishments can be both non-academic and academic.
I can go, or anybody else can go if you want to switch up the order, but feel free to jump in. So for us, there's really 4 key pieces of sort of application materials that our applicants have an opportunity to highlight and tell their story. And so those 4 pieces are the application essay, your resume or CV, your interview. In our case, we do a video interview that's submitted with the application. And then finally, letters of recommendation. So while you're not, as an applicant, writing those, your recommenders are, they do also contribute to the story that your file is conveying. And so what I look for when I want to zero in and really understand an applicant's story is congruence between those pieces. So, if you did a really amazing project at the undergraduate level that you're really proud of, and that is related, perhaps it's related to the discipline that you're seeking in the future, mention it in your application essay. Find a way to squeeze it in there in between the prompts that we were already asking you. Mention it in your resume, mention it in your interview if you can. So that you're really sort of driving home and shining a light, literally highlighting the aspects of your application that you really want people to understand about you and what you bring to the table.
I completely agree with everything you said. We also have the same 4 ways that students can share about accomplishments or projects. So to expand a little bit on those, so for the personal statement, and to also speak to what Allison had mentioned, our personal statement, we have specific prompts, and I can't tell you how many times students just completely miss those prompts and just write about all kinds of things and don't answer any of the questions that were outlined. So definitely pay attention to detail is so important. So make sure whatever program you do apply to, you look at if they have specific prompts. So our prompts, we ask students to tell us a little bit about, how they found themselves, applying, what was their journey to finding the field of public health. And this is where you could share about if there are specific, accomplishments or projects that really got you interested in the field, or that, piqued your interest or sparked your interest. That's a great place to highlight those. Your resume is also a place where you can include these, making sure you're tailoring it to the programs that you're applying to is also helpful, because we do notice when students do that. For letters of recommendation, if you can find folks that can really speak to why the degree makes sense for your future career goals, and they can talk about some of those accomplishments and highlight some of those projects that you worked on, it's a nice way to weave these things throughout your entire application, like Adiza was mentioning. And then, of course, the interview is also a great way to talk about them in real time, especially if there were aspects that you weren't able to fit in other places, but you want the admission committee to be aware of. So make sure you have your little notes on the side so you can remember to cover those things, but ensuring that there is, common themes throughout your application. Admission committees do recognize those and see when students put in those efforts to highlight those things.
And same for us. We have some of the same 4 avenues. You can do all of these things. I would say that for the essay, one of the main differences for this is compared to like undergrad, like this isn't the time to be like creative or metaphorical. I know sometimes in high school, like our English teacher or our CBO or whoever may have been helping us along, graduate school is really, you're pursuing this for your professional goals or to change careers or to start your career. And so your essay should reflect that, right? It should also be relevant. So, if it is, so I would say like, and also current. So don't talk about like, your love of Legos at 5, unless it makes sense, right? Unless you can connect it to why, you want to pursue this degree. But so those are my like pieces of my 2 cents in terms of the essay. I would also say with letters of recommendation, I know this sounds silly to say, but make sure you're asking people who will say nice things or positive things. You'll be very surprised at some of the recommendations we read and how like blatant they are about, hey, I don't recommend, or I don't really know this person like that. And sometimes we're choosing people based on who we think the admissions committee wants to see or the program wants to see. And that's not the approach you should have. It really should be someone, of course, who is relevant, right? So maybe that's a supervisor, a mentor, an old professor, or an alum that you met, right? But it should be someone that knows you and can speak positively towards you and your success of this program. It's also important to let your recommenders know if you are applying to more than one. I mean, they're people too. They'll make mistakes. They can put the wrong school. They can put the wrong name. And so you want to be clear with where you're applying, what programs, et cetera. And not to say like those things will make or break your decision, but it's just like, it's just one thing that sometimes people just can't get out of their heads. And then in terms of the resume and just your application period, like, it's not the time to be humble, okay? Like, you need to list all of the hard work that you've done and everything that's relevant and related to your career goals, the program, whatever you want to do. Internships count, things that also may not be direct, like a job is a job. Like, don't be humble. Don't not include things because you think we don't want to see it. Like, talk about your experience, make sure it makes sense. Volunteer work counts, like all of that is important as long as it's relevant and you can tie it into why you want to do the program.
Also, just to piggyback really quick about the letters of recommendation, those were all really great tips, Allison, and I would add to that make sure that you're reaching out to the recommenders thoughtfully and early on in your process, right? You want to give them ample time and opportunity to craft a really thoughtful letter of recommendation for you. And so this like 2-week window is not enough. You really want to give people more than enough, sort of heads up so that they can craft that letter and carve out the time to do so.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all of the nuggets of information. I think you all brought in really important information for each of these pieces that I think sometimes we sort of submit very quickly, right? And so thank you so much for that information. Our next question is, what do graduates pursue with their degrees, and what careers have the graduates from your programs pursued? And I know all of you see recruitment for many different careers, and so yeah, would just love to hear our degrees. Just would love to hear the depth and breadth of careers that you've seen across applicants.
So for our degree programs, again, those pathways are really different. I can go over sort of generally speaking. So for the Master of Science in Nonprofit Leadership, as you can imagine, these are people who want to go on and be impactful leaders in nonprofit spaces. And so you're thinking, when you think about assistant directors, directors, or program managers, thinking development and communication officers. So people who are in senior leadership positions in nonprofit settings. Now, those nonprofits can vary in terms of their areas of focus. You have some that focus on the environment, some that focus on children and youth or other vulnerable populations, some that focus on education or arts and culture. It really depends on sort of where their passions lie. For our other master's degree programs, the Master of Science in Social Policy, they find themselves in policy-related positions in local, state, and federal government. They also find themselves in positions in think tanks or on Capitol Hill, or other organizations where they serve as policy analysts, senior analysts, trying to think of some other sort of relevant titles, development coordinators, directors of policy, program associates. It really depends. And obviously those areas of policy are all going to be obviously policy related positions, but also further than that, for this particular program, it's typically those sets of policies that affect underprivileged and underserved communities. So it's really policy work with a social justice lens. So those are the sort of the context of environments that those graduates will be working in. And then for the Master of Social Work, runs the gamut really. You have those who focus more on the one-on-one clinical space, so they can be in therapeutic contexts in community mental health agencies or in treatment facilities or programs as school social workers, nonprofit organizations that specialize in providing social services. They could be case managers or crisis intervention workers, therapists, staff therapists, as an outpatient therapist. It really it runs the gamut. On the macro end of social work, then you have people who are really working in leadership positions and in perhaps they're managing people who are providing the clinical services. You also have directors and associate directors of facilities that provide social work services. They could be grant writers or policymakers with regard to social work services. And then our doctorate in clinical social work graduates actually work in higher education, most of them. Others also work in private practice, providing therapy and consultation in a clinical aspect. And then finally, our PhD in social welfare, that is the academia track. And so they are typically working in higher education settings on tenure track positions. So I know that's a lot, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of touch points for what our graduates are working.
For the Master of Public Health program, what I love so much about this training is that our students do so many different things and work in different sectors and different topic areas. And I've been working with our alumni database, so I have some job titles at top of mind that I think would be helpful to share. But specifically, looking at the sectors that our graduates tend to go in, we have a lot of folks that go into the nonprofit, NGO space, local government. So we have a lot of folks at PDPH, so Philadelphia Department of Public Health. We have some folks that go the federal government track, so Centers for Disease Control, World Health Organization, USDA, and then folks that go the international health and development route, so UNICEF or USAID. And then we have some folks that go the consulting route. So some organizations are McKinsey and Company or Deloitte. And then a newish track that some graduates have gone down is the insurance route. So working with like Independence Blue Cross or Aetna or AmeriHealth. And then policy is a really big track that our graduates go into. And a lot of folks work at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, their policy lab. So that's a big one if you're interested in health policy. Some titles that some of our alums hold are epidemiologists, health policy analysts, public health consultant, public health nutritionist, public health manager or director, global health specialist, infectious disease specialist, public health researcher, or health services administrator. And there are so many different topic areas you can go into within public health to serve in some of these roles, but some of the ones that our alums are in are nutrition, maternal and child health, sexual health, violence prevention and control, immigrant health, LGBTQ plus health, looking at the social determinants of health or health equity, housing insecurity, environmental health, mental health, infectious disease, or just looking at chronic diseases, disaster preparedness, and substance use. So if any of those topic areas or any of those job titles seem interesting to you, we could definitely chat more about what that could look like as a future career.
Awesome. Okay. As I mentioned, we have 39 programs. So they are, again, very specific and primarily to the population of the student. So it depends on, of course, if you want to be full-time, part-time, if you're in the early stages of your career, if you are mid-level, if you're looking for like senior leadership positions or you're changing careers. And so many of our students are, researchers or administrators, teachers, counselors, a lot of students who are pursuing PhDs, want to be professors, or, work for think tanks, or the government as well. But we also have, a wide range of students. We have students who are lawyers, who are consultants, who are in the corporate sector, who become VPs and directors of like big companies like ACT, McGraw-Hill, and College Board. Anything with ed tech. We also have students who want to be presidents and deans and superintendents, right? We literally have 5 different higher education programs. So, it really does depend on what you want to do and what program makes the most sense for you. And that also comes down to distinctions between like our PhD and our doctorate of education, where one is tailored for like the working professional, for example. We have 2 counseling programs where students, can earn their LPC and their school counseling certification at the same time. We're the only school like that in the country. We have students who go on to become research analysts, global directors of talent development, analysts for the Department of Education. A lot of our ed policy students go into that realm. Students who want to start schools. I mean, again, you name it, if it has to do with education, we have students who are taking those kinds of courses and who ultimately become alums. If you actually go on any program's website, they will list alumni careers for every single program that we have, if you want to explore a little bit further. But if it has to do with education or it's education adjacent, you can believe you can do it at Penn GSC.
Wow, amazing. Makes me question now my PhD choices back, about a decade or so ago. Anyway, thank you so much for sharing all your thoughts. We do have 2 more questions, but I wanted to open the conversation and invite some of our attendees to drop in their questions. Maybe they can unmute themselves or put it in the chat and we'll pass it along. I suppose everyone is just so blown away by all the wealth of information you had to share. Yeah, so we do have one question. So it is, what is your biggest advice for first-gen applicants? And it could be to any of you, I suppose.
I can share. Oh, Allison, I saw you go off mute. You can share. You sure? Okay. As someone who was a first-gen applicant myself, so I would say my personal advice, and then what I've seen some of our other first-gen applicants do is, I would say try to connect with students that are in the program currently or alums. I think that helped me a lot with understanding the culture of the program to make sure it was a right fit for me, what resources were available to first-gen students, so not only academic, but financial aid, and then what career development resources were available, and how the program would support you not only during the program, but after as well. So those things were really important for me to understand to make sure that I had the tools necessary to succeed as someone who had no idea what I was doing or, what to expect. So a lot of our applicants will reach out and ask to be connected to current students or alum, and also just ask for informational chats just to get to know us better, to make sure that it's a right fit. So I would say that's a great step, to just make sure the program is the right fit for your needs, and just ensuring that they are going to support you not only throughout, but after you receive your degree.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I'd also, taking advantage of opportunities like today is also incredibly important. Sometimes it can really feel like, oh, one more thing to do, or you're already sort of juggling a lot. But the more face time you get with people who can help sort of, I call it like, you just removing the mystique about the admissions process and about graduate education, right? You can begin to imagine yourself in these spaces. It's not as daunting. You can get yourself really dialed in on the things that you need to focus on and how to do those things well, and have conversations with people that can help you along the way. But further than that, once you achieve admission, because you will be accepted somewhere. Is it Nair? I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. As a first-gen student, I can only speak from my own experiences, but I dealt with a little bit of imposter syndrome, really not necessarily feeling like I belonged at Penn. And I will never forget something that the director of admissions said to me when they saw me at convocation, sort of the first day that you step foot on campus to begin your journey as a matriculated student. And they said, make no mistake, you are here because you belong here. We offered you admission because we believe in what you would bring to the table in terms of the education that you could receive from us, and also the impact that you would have in the world post-graduation. So, really taking seriously that this isn't just about whether or not you belong at a place, but also what they can stand to gain from you being in that educational space as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say exactly what Adiza said. I think one thing we often do is kind of count ourselves out, right? And make assumptions. And imposter syndrome is real and something that even after you've like done all these amazing things, you'll still be like, but can I do that? And especially if you're already a current Penn student, I mean, come on, like you've done this already. And also like even if you're not a Penn student, like you are a student, right? So you have gone through the application process already and been successful. So don't overthink it, right? We're still asking for the same things you've already had to collect. You've had to write an essay before and get letters of recommendation, etc. And just don't overthink it. We have an application process for a reason because we want students and we want you to apply. But then in that regard too, like also don't be afraid to be yourself, right? So, be authentically you, whatever that means, and take up all the space that you need. It's also important to understand because people do read your application. We don't know what you don't share, right? We're not going to make any assumptions. We're not going to think, you overcame this, or, we're not going to make up the story for you. So it's important to share your story yourself, and your experiences and why you're pursuing this next challenge or degree or program, and how it's going to help you. You also want to make, this is a little secret, okay? This is exclusive. You want to make the program feel like we're your number one. Okay. And that may not, and we know you're applying to more than one school and we know you're applying to more than one program, but you need to make us believe that you want to be here. And so it's a little finesse, okay? But you're selling yourself, right? That's a part of the process. And you want to put your best foot forward and your best application forward. And I think sometimes, especially as a first gen student, we can get in our own way of that or be scared to kind of be that vulnerable. But don't be, because as Adiza said, like your experience is important. It's unique, and what you bring to the classroom is so different. And that's for anybody. But I think, especially as a first gen student who may not have the guidance or support, or, your family may be like, why are you going to school again? Like still, like you're not done. There are some extra barriers that you're gonna have. And so you kind of have to have that strength to like go forward, get that imposter syndrome out the way. And the worst that can happen is no, and that's okay, and you'll be okay, right? Or there are other programs and other institutions, etc. So that will be my advice.
All right. I see Anita is working on some of the MPH specific questions. Thank you so much for that. I did get a direct message question, which was, do you have any advice for narrowing down options for programs with many degree or specialization options?
I think the more conversations you could have, so I'm not sure which sort of specialization or certificate options you might be interested in, but for us, our students don't necessarily have to have that decision made when they start a program. It's definitely something that they can integrate after the first semester. So the more that you can sort of front load having conversations that help, or experiences that help you narrow down the specialization option or certificate that you might be interested in incorporating, then do that, because it can get overwhelming. I know we have like over a dozen for our Master of Social Work program. So there's a lot of different areas of focus that one could choose. And sometimes it can be overwhelming because you want to do it all. But really being able to, I think at the graduate level, what's really important is focus, right? How can you get really good at something specific? And so the more that you can get closer to dialing in on that, the better. So I hope that's helpful.
there any other questions in the chat that we missed? Okay. If not, we can maybe tackle some of the more from some of our additional questions that we thought maybe students might be interested in. Any recommendations from our panelists on the essay specifically? Maybe some do's and don'ts, especially as it relates to topic and form. I know we touched on a little bit of it for some of you.
Yeah, I feel like Allison did a great job of sort of giving the tidbit that programs like to feel wanted, schools want to feel wanted. So that's your opportunity in the application essay to really demonstrate that you've given careful consideration to why you are applying to the school and to the specific program. But further than that, and I understand being in this role that applicants are going to be applying to more than one school. That's just, it's known. And I think the temptation at the sort of level of the applicant to write one essay, there's a temptation there to write one essay and have it work for every school that you're applying to. I have read thousands of essays and I can always tell when it's something that was written in a general fashion that you're then submitting to us. It is very important to answer the specific prompts and questions that the school or the program is asking. Stay away from the temptation to try to have this one piece of writing that works for every school that you're applying to. And have somebody whose opinion you value, trust, and respect read it before you submit it. Sometimes, I know this because I'm doing a ton of writing for the program I'm in, sometimes you can miss a glaring error because you're looking at it all day, every day. You've read it a dozen times and you're missing something major. But another set of fresh eyes on that same piece of writing could find something. So only one person, it just takes one person just to give a second look for you, so that way you've really covered your bases and are submitting a really solid piece of writing. Because actually, for us, I can say that the application essay is not really just about what we're asking you, why us, why now, why this program. It's also us evaluating, can you follow instructions? And because following those instructions are going to be key at the graduate level. Most of your time spent in the program is going to be reading and writing for class, right? So it's really our ability to see what are your skills in terms of providing a piece of writing with very specific instructions. Can you do that? Because that's all graduate school is, right? You're reading and you're also sort of turning around and writing a lot of content, or at least in our specific degree programs.
One thing I would add is that one of the questions we ask for the personal statement is why Penn's MPH program? There are so many great MPH programs, especially in Philly. You have Temple, you have Drexel, you have Jefferson, you have LaSalle's. I mean, you name it, there's so many. So, and they're all so different. So we want to know why Penn's and why it makes sense for your career goals and your training goals and just like your values. And so many times I'm reading personal statements and the applicant will talk about why Penn, just why Penn, but not why Penn's MPH program. So just making sure you're talking directly about the program. So the courses, maybe if there's a faculty that has research they're doing that you're interested in, or the mission and values of the program. A big one of our values and mission statement is that racism is a public health issue, and we integrate health equity throughout all of our core classes and electives. So if that's something that means something to you and something that you look for in programs, say that and include why that makes sense for your goals. So just addressing why our specific program is helpful, and also it is one of our criteria. So it goes back to making sure you're addressing the questions that are asked.
Yep, all of those good things, same for us. I would also add to just Importance of making sure it's your own work. I know that's kind of crazy to say, but especially with the temptation of just chat GPT and using AI, make sure that all of your application materials are your own. We can also detect when you're using ChatGPT personally, but also technology-wise too. Admissions departments also have to keep up with the times. And so you don't want something like that to really just automatically, disqualify you and count you out of the application process, because academic integrity is so important, but especially at the graduate level, because you are becoming a master, right, of this specific program or topic. And especially if you're thinking about a PhD, right, that's only reading and writing. You'll be writing a dissertation, which is a new and original contribution of work. And so it's really important that even something like the essay, you really make sure you're using your own voice. I will also say, what Adiza said about like, we can tell when, you're using it for the same, more than one program, et cetera. And if you are, able to, if you have your essay and you could put your finger over the name of the school and the program, and it fits with almost any school or program, then you're not being specific enough. So that's a good like exercise to kind of say, okay, well, am I diving deep? Am I really answering why this program specifically? And again, like you can use your resources available to you, like the website, right? To really, that only not helps you make your application stronger, but it helps you decide on if this program makes sense for you, right? And if it's going to fit with your lifestyle or your goals, right? And the other coin of that is you can then talk about all that research that you've done within your essay, right? Whether it's this faculty member's research or this specific class, right? Because that's one of the most unique things about schools are their faculty and the curriculum. It's another nugget for you guys. But yeah. So I think, at the end of the day, the essay is probably my favorite piece. It should also be tying everything together too, a little bit like your resume, like your interests, like, why you specifically want to apply to this program or this degree or this school.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your thoughts. In our personal statement or statement of purpose review appointments, I always talk about, making sure that the writer is able to convey that the program is a good fit for them and an applicant is a good fit for the program. So really showing the dual fit with customized information for each of the programs. All right, so we have about 4 minutes left. So I am going to skip over the next question, but maybe I will invite the panelists to share their email in the chat with everybody, and I will also email everyone who is registered, both the recording as well as any specific information that our panelists have to share. And just a plug for anyone who's applying this cycle, we do have some specific as well as, more general social humanities and social science specific statement of purpose workshops coming up this week. If you want to talk about your pre-grad journey for any of these programs, you can look into Handshake, find us. So as I mentioned previously, I work with anyone who's interested in STEM kind of program. So MPH folks can come to me. We also have another pre-grad advisor on our team, Dr. Hagan, and then Esther and Sharon's team works specifically with people who are interested in applying to GSE, SB2, psychology as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And nursing.
And nursing. Wonderful. So once again, thank you to our amazing panelists for your advice, for sharing your experience and your insights. We are really indebted to you for your time today.
Thank you so much for everything.
Thanks for having us.
And this was so enjoyable.
All right. Bye-bye.